We start our program in Gaza, where Israel's armed forces have begun a new offensive in the central city of Deir el-Balah. Smoke could be seen rising above the Gaza Strip on Monday morning. Israeli tanks are also operating in Deir el-Balah. It's the first time tanks have entered the city since the war in Gaza began. Israel's military believes some of the remaining hostages held by Hamas may be there. The area is also, of course, crowded with Palestinians who have fled the fighting. Earlier, journalist Karim el-Gawhary in Cairo told us what he's been hearing from the ground in Gaza.
Well, first, when you talk about Deir el-Balah, we had an evacuation order that yesterday that was followed this morning by the Israeli army moving in with all its means. There's little footage, but we can hear in the little footage we have heavy gunfire. It's difficult to get a hold on people in Deir el-Balah. We tried, for example, to call our cameraman who lives there, but we can't get a hold of him. Reports speak about that there's total chaos in the town, people just trying to get out of the way of the army. The offensive seems to be part of the Israeli strategy to clear the central part of the Gaza Strip of people to send them further south. First, this happened in Khan Yunis when it was attacked by the Israeli army, and now in neighboring Deir el-Balah. It's consistent with the announcement of Israeli plans that call on setting up some kind of humanitarian city in the south around Rafah. This is also the place where the 4 distribution centers of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundations are set up. So all this fits somehow in the picture of displacing people further south.
That was Karim el-Gawhary reporting from Cairo. The foreign ministers of more than 20 countries have called for an immediate and unconditional and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. The group, including the UK, France, Italy, Austria, and Canada, said that civilian suffering there had reached new depths. They said the Israeli government's denial of essential humanitarian assistance to the civilian population is unacceptable. Israel must comply with its obligations under international humanitarian law. Tensions between Israel and UN humanitarian agencies are reaching unprecedented levels. Over the weekend, Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar confirmed that he had ordered the withdrawal of the residency permit of Jonathan Whitall. He's the head of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Israel. Sa'ar accused the organization of distorting reality, spreading false reports, and violating UN neutrality. This marks the latest in a series of visa denials and entry restrictions by Israeli authorities targeting senior UN officials. This year, Israel refused visa renewals for the heads of 3 UN agencies. It has denied 56% of UN emergency medical teams' entries request into Gaza. It has also banned the operations of UNWRA, the UN relief agency for Palestinian refugees in Israel, and expelled its international staff. The UN has warned these actions are severely hindering humanitarian operations and appear to be in retaliation for critical reporting on the war in Gaza. I asked Juliette Touma, UNWRA Director of Communications, to respond to the accusations of the Israeli Foreign Minister.
Very good to see you. Look, while our colleague from OCHA was the last to be refused a visa, he's certainly not the first, and looks like there is a pattern of not giving several of us humanitarians visas to go and serve the communities in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank.
What diplomatic efforts have there been to de-escalate tensions between the UN and Israeli authorities?
We are a humanitarian organization, so our job is to deliver humanitarian aid. Our job is also to speak to what is happening to the communities that we are serving. And this is what several of us have been doing in an effort to put an end to the carnage in a balanced way, calling on all parties to the conflict to do what they needed to do, reach an agreement, come finally to a ceasefire, open the gates of Gaza, release the hostages, This is what we've been doing, and we hope that there will be an agreement soon and that all these elements will be addressed.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know if you can give us a little more detail maybe about the conversations that are happening behind the scenes in order to improve the relationship between the UN and Israel.
That I don't have, Nicole, because you see, UNWRA has been banned by the Israeli authorities, and that also includes an embargo on their contact with us. And so they are not contacting us. They're not giving us visas. We're not being invited to meetings. And we do hope that UNWRA is allowed back into the occupied Palestinian territory, including to provide humanitarian assistance. Our staff called us this morning to say that their colleagues were fainting at their desks while on duty because they are starving and exhausted.
Give our viewers a sense of how the restrictions on visas, movement and supplies have been affecting the UN's ability to perform its tasks in all the Palestinian territories.
Yeah, the humanitarian operation has been made totally unnecessarily complex and cumbersome through these bureaucratic procedures that were added as the war went by. And it's quite unusual for the state of Israel because previously to the war, we've had a very good humanitarian access, and at UNWRA as well, we've had very good cooperation and relationship with the government of Israel. We've certainly seen it in other parts of the world where we serve in the UN, in particular among authoritarian regimes or countries. But this is, I would say, a new phenomenon and a new practice, and it's not new. This started early on. The first happened in December 2023, and our head, Under Secretary General Philippe Lazzarini, the head of UNWRA, was denied entry to Gaza already back in March 24.
What's the UN's contingency plan if these restrictions were to continue or even escalate further?
Look, like it is wherever we operate around the world in humanitarian settings, we have the vast majority of our staff are locally recruited staff. So we have a fantastic number of staff who are holding the fort for us at UNWRA. They're the ones who have been doing the heavy lifting in a place like Gaza and also in the West Bank. Our role is to go there and support them in their heavy duty work. And quite frankly, we are very worried about not just their state of mind, but also physically, because they themselves, who are supposed to be caretakers, they need care themselves.
That's Juliette Touma, UNWRA Director of Communications. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And for the latest, let's bring in our Jerusalem correspondent, Tania Krämer. Tania, over 170 Palestinians are reported to have died by Israeli gun strikes and bombings over the weekend. What more can you tell us?
Well, we understand from the World Food Programme, they put out a statement about the incident that happened yesterday. They came in with 25 of their trucks carrying aid supplies, and they were met with a very, very hungry, large crowd. They came in from the northern crossing of Zikim. Now, they said in the statement there was tank fire, snipers and other gunfire. Now, the Israeli military, the Israel Defense Forces, they said they fired only warning shots to remove imminent threats to its troops. They're investigating. This is what they always say in such incidents that we've seen really happening almost every day. And they denied this high death toll and blaming Hamas instead. Now, this comes, of course, in light of all the developments regarding an ever-deepening hunger crisis. That is how the United Nations is describing it the WFP said 1 in 3 people has not enough to eat. In a few days, malnutrition is rising among people while aid is outside waiting at the crossings, and while everything is obviously available on the other side of the border in Israel and also in Egypt. Having said that, from local authorities, we're hearing already since the morning that over 20 people have been killed in strikes and bombardment across the Gaza Strip.
Now, Israel has issued an evacuation order for people in Gaza's central Deir el-Balah. What's the plan there?
Well, the Israeli military only said that they want to expand their operations in areas they haven't yet operated in. So they called on at least 4 areas there in Deir el-Balah for people to evacuate. And we are hearing from eyewitnesses on the ground that there has been shelling going on. There also have been airstrikes reported in the area since the morning. Now, the United Nations had put out a statement, that's UNWRA, in the morning, saying this might affect between 50 to 80,000 people. You have to know that Deir el-Balah, it's in the middle part of Gaza, was basically seen as a place where a lot of people have been sheltering. There have been airstrikes and bombardment going on, but not in every area. Ground operations. They also say that their vital infrastructure in this area, like UN warehouses, as well as UN and NGO guest houses, but also, for example, a desalination plant. Now, this means that people will be pushed even further to areas, and we have new figures out by the United Nations saying that over 80, especially 88% almost of the territory in Gaza is now either a military zone or under displacement or evacuation order. The Israeli military had said in July that they are operationally controlling now over 60% of Gaza. So it means people are ever pushed into a very fragmented small areas in the Gaza Strip.
Now, so far, Israel has avoided ground operations in areas where the army suspects hostages to be held, like Deir el-Balah. So what do you think is the IDF's aim here?
Well, it's very hard to tell because I don't know, we don't know where the hostages are located, but there's certainly concern among the relatives of those hostages that the Israeli military is now pushing and going ahead with it. We even heard a far-right minister today saying that they should go ahead with this. There's some analysts here saying this could be pressure to put pressure on Hamas. Currently, indirect talks are ongoing between Hamas and Israel in Doha, that they agree to a new ceasefire and hostage release agreement. There are conflicting reports how much they're going forward with this. But of course, it is a very difficult situation there, and this could be additional pressure on Hamas to agree to such a ceasefire agreement.
Tania Krämer there reporting from Jerusalem. Thank you, Tania.
Israel's military has begun a new offensive in the Gaza Strip and the central city of Deir el-Balah. Reports indicate Israeli tanks have driven into the city and that Israeli soldiers are operating on the ground. If confirmed, it would be the first time Israel's military has entered Deir el-Balah since the war in Gaza began. Israel believes some of the remaining hostages being held by Hamas could be there. The area is home to thousands of Palestinians who have taken shelter from fighting in the rest of Gaza.
Israel's near-daily bombardment of Gaza continues. This woman lost her son in one of the strikes.
They hit the tent next to us. My son was sleeping. We were all sleeping in the tent. I was injured in the leg, and he was hit by shrapnel here in his neck. They told us to leave the tent. I went to wake my son up, and I found him martyred. We have nothing to do with anybody. We have nothing to do with Hamas or jihad or anything. He died. I have 2 sons. One of them died. Who is left?
And for the first time in 21 months of war, Israeli ground troops are now pushing into Gaza's central city of Deir el-Balah. It's where several aid agencies are based. and is the only remaining area of Gaza that has not suffered widespread destruction. According to Israeli sources, that is where Hamas militants may be holding hostages. Tens of thousands of people from the rest of Gaza sought refuge here until the Israeli army issued evacuation orders on Sunday.
We expected that these massacres would stop and that someone would stand by our side and they would stop this incineration, but no action has been taken. We are now at a point where our expectations are dead. We don't expect anything from anyone.
25 countries have condemned Israel's killing of aid seekers in Gaza and called for an end to the war. Germany was not among them. An excerpt from the statement reads, "The Israeli government's aid delivery model is dangerous, fuels instability, and deprives Gazans of human dignity. We condemn the drip feeding of aid and the inhumane killing of civilians, including children, seeking to meet their most basic needs of water and food." The UN says more than 800 people have been killed while queuing for aid in Gaza since May. Israel has rejected the statement, calling it, quote, disconnected from reality.
Emily Gordine is following the war in Gaza for us from Jerusalem. Emily, Israel has launched a new ground operation in Deir el-Balah. We heard it there, an area that had been largely spared in the war. What's behind this operation?
Well, we don't entirely know why Israel launched this operation just now. We know that this is the first time, in fact, that it has launched a ground operation in this area. This area was spared over the course of almost the last 2 years now in this war. That is because it is believed to be the area in which Hamas holds the remaining living hostages, the remaining living Israeli hostages. That's why this area also wasn't as badly bombarded as other areas in Gaza. You will see more houses still standing. You also still have functioning medical points here. You also still have drinking water from a desalination plant in the area. And that is also, in fact, why many humanitarian organizations, including the UN, moved key parts of their operations from, for example, Rafah in the south, that the Israeli forces entered about over a year ago. That's why they moved their key parts of their operations to Deir el-Balah, because it was considered still an area where you can move around, where there was some form of infrastructure in place. And now the UN, of course, is saying that if this area is damaged, it will cut off Palestinians, the remaining civilians, and many civilians, in fact, moved there from other areas across Gaza. So they are internally displaced, now living in Deir el-Balah. It will cut them off from the little water supplies, the little medical supplies, the little humanitarian supplies that still exist in Gaza. But the hostage families in Israel have also voiced their concerns over this operation. They fear for the lives of the hostages, that this could in fact risk their lives. They've demanded answers from the government. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu repeatedly has said in the past that he believes that expanding Israel's military operation in Gaza will in fact put pressure on Hamas in the negotiations. But the ceasefire negotiations, they've stalled for months, and the last attempts, the last efforts to reach a 2-month truce have reached somewhat of an impasse precisely over aid, that humanitarian aid getting into Gaza, but also over reaching a permanent end to this war.
Mm-hmm. Gaza yesterday saw one of the deadliest days of this conflict, with at least 80 aid seekers killed by Israeli fire. What can you tell us about the humanitarian situation on the ground in that light?
Well, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is incredibly dire. The World Food Programme said today, in fact, that the hunger crisis, quote, has reached new levels of desperation. The UN Secretary General also said that he was appalled by the breakdown of the humanitarian conditions on the ground in Gaza. According to the Red Cross, over 500,000 Palestinians are at risk of starvation. In the last 24 hours alone, 19 Palestinians are said to have died of hunger, according to local health authorities. And at the same time, we're also seeing more and more reports of severe cases of malnutrition. And we've also seen over the course of the last few weeks that, in fact, accessing aid in Gaza has become somewhat of a deadly mission. We've seen almost daily reports of Palestinians being killed, mainly by Israeli fire, as they're trying to seek aid from various distribution sites. The UN, in fact, recorded over 900 deaths of aid seekers since May. Now we have to remember here that this is not happening. This is not an accident. This is a man-made catastrophe. And as we just heard in the report, several countries have called on Israel to let more aid in. But so far, that is falling on deaf ears in Israel.
That's DW's Emily Gordine from Jerusalem. Thanks so much.